Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why you sometimes get confused about when exactly an event happened? Like, did I have that lunch meeting with my friend last Tuesday, or was it 2 weeks ago? We live in a world where we constantly update our memories, but how exactly does our brain keep track of the order of life experiences when they look almost exactly the same? This is the big question behind a cool new study. The researchers wanted to know if the simple act of trying to figure out if something has changed actually helps us remember the sequence of events better later on. Think about it like this. You go to your favorite coffee shop twice. The second time, you notice your friend is wearing a different jacket. By realizing that change, you are doing more than just identifying an object. You are actually sharpening your memory for the timeline of that friendship. To test this, the researchers used a clever game. They had people look at a series of pictures of everyday objects. Then they showed them a second set of pictures. Some were the exact same, some were brand new, and some were what we call similar lures. Those lures look almost identical to the things you saw first, but had a tiny, subtle difference. The goal was to see if people could correctly spot the difference, to check if this helps with memory. The researchers added a final challenge where people had to put those two versions of the objects in order, like deciding which one they saw in the first round and which appeared later. The results were really fascinating. They found that when people correctly identified a lure as similar, their brain was actually working a bit harder to compare the new item to the old memory. Because they did that work, they were much better at remembering the order of events later on. It is like the brain is building a little mental map of time, and that effort to spot the difference acts like a permanent anchor for your memories. Now, the researchers got even more granular. They wanted to know if people really felt the change. They found that when people had a clear, subjective feeling of remembering both versions of the object, their ability to remember the order of events jumped even higher. But what if you do not notice the change? The study showed that when people failed to realize the items were different, they actually struggled more to keep their timeline straight. This is what scientists call proactive interference. It basically means your old memories aren't helping you, they are just getting in the way because you cannot tell the old event from the new one. So what is the takeaway for us? Well, this study shows that paying attention to details actually protects your sense of time. When you are distracted or just going through the motions, your brain might mix up the past and the present. But when you actively look for what has changed, you are sharpening your memory across the board. The researchers did point out some limits, like the fact that they could not see inside the brain to track the exact neurons firing, and they used a specific controlled set of images. Still, this paints a clear picture. Being present helps you order your life story correctly. I think this study is a great reminder that memory is not just a passive file cabinet. It is an active process. We are constantly updating our database of experiences. And the quality of that update depends on how much attention we give to those small, subtle changes in our day-to-day lives. Future research will hopefully show us even more about the brain regions that juggle these similar memories between the hippocampus and the rest of the brain. If you enjoyed this dive into the science of how we remember order, hit that like button. Leave a comment about the time you mixed up the timeline of your own memories, and don't forget to subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for your weekly dose of brain science. See you next time.